The Kansas City Chiefs were back in action in St. Joseph, Missouri today in order to keep putting on the pads and going at it. And I've got a couple of notes before we get into the actual notes from the practice itself, and it begins right there. Mike Dana, quoted by Arrowhead Pride as saying, 9-on-7 was tough. It was hot, but when the pads come on, you see who's really about it and who's not. I feel like everybody stepped up on both sides of the ball. We were competing today. This is a very promising thing to see from this team, a team that has been to 3 consecutive Super Bowls, a team that has been to 7 consecutive AFC Championship games, a team that has won the AFC West for so many seasons in a row, is starting the season not with poopy pants. They are starting the season competing with each other in St. Joseph, Missouri, in the heat, in their pads. This is what they want to do. I've heard no complaining. I've heard no one taking reps off. I've heard of no one not showing up. I have heard of no one. Look, you had the semi-holdout. I don't know if there's really holdouts anymore in the NFL outside of Cincinnati. I don't know if there's really holdouts anymore, but Omar Norman-Lott was late to sign and has been about business since he got to camp and is rotating in with the ones, which is pretty exceedingly rare with a Steve Spagnuolo defense, especially this early in training camp. A guy who has proven nothing at the NFL level coming in and getting reps with the ones doesn't happen very often. And that would be the one guy that you would think may have come in with some qualms, someone who signed super late, but nothing. There has been nothing, no discord from Chiefs camp, no fistfights yet from Chiefs camp. Again, Travis Kelce's on the field, someone's getting punched, okay? But that will come yet. And the next thing I wanted to say is that a lot of times it's after the first padded practice that you start to see some jostling on the depth chart, and it appears that we have some of that today. We'll get to that in just a short moment, but the notes from practice open up with Citadel Chief, who says, Brenningstool is my candidate to be stashed on the IR. Opens up for Kelce, Gray, Wiley, and Tonyan as the tight end group. I have to ask, because this does happen every season, is this an open secret league-wide? The Chiefs seemingly always have a young guy who is promising but not quite ready for the roster, who ends up on the IR to start the season. It seems that is always, it was Nico Remigio a couple years ago, right? Do all teams do this? Is this like a shady deal that every team gets one? You get one guy that you get to stash on IR in this way. It seems like there would be more people complaining about this because the Chiefs are getting away with it. But I don't know that I am ready to make that call. Jake Brenningstool is apparently struggling with a hamstring injury. I don't see Robert Tonyan being as promising as Jake Brenningstool. Robert Tonyan, I think, does bring an element of blocking to this group that I don't think Brenningstool does, and I don't think is there with Kelce, Gray, or Wiley either. I think that he could be the sort of tight end fullback hybrid if you were looking for one, that sort of H-back on the roster. Noah Gray has gotten away with doing some of it, but I don't think Noah Gray is ever going to be a dominant blocker. I think Tonyan could be. I think that he has that in him, but he would still have to prove it, obviously. The next note here, interesting rotation on no offensive line. I believe this is supposed to be number 2 offensive line, judging by the personnel mentioned. Interesting rotation on number 2 offensive line from left to right. Wanye Morris, Hunter Nourzad, Mike Caliendo, Chu Godric, and Ethan Driscoll. Nourzad and Caliendo have been rotating day to day between right guard and center. First time I recall seeing Godric at guard. Moore swapping reps at right tackle. That's Jalen Moore swapping reps at right tackle. This is both an interesting thing and a disappointing thing. The interesting thing, Chu Godric at offensive guard instead of offensive tackle, that makes him more intriguing in my opinion because new to the sport of football and all of that, he's not really proven his mettle at at the offensive tackle position through a couple of seasons now. So if it is that he's getting a shot at right guard, then you're getting a shot at a position that does not have to be on an island quite so much. It's very rare that offensive tackles really have all that much help. The offensive guard position has help in their assignments more often than offensive tackle. So maybe he has the athleticism, but he's struggling with the technique or this or that. But he is still promising to keep around for as long as they've kept him around. And that would mean that getting a shot at offensive guard gives him a better opportunity. This is disappointing, however, for CJ Hansen, because I really do think that CJ Hansen has great potential at guard. I think that he has upward mobility at tackle. He's a guy that has an incredible RAS score, a very good athlete, tall, maybe a little bit short arms, decent weight. I think he could get up there in weight, very fast for the position, decently mobile for the position, and has some explosive numbers. But CJ Hansen not getting any reps at the number 2 offensive line positions is troubling. That stinks. I was really hoping for CJ Hansen. But when we go to that next name on the list there, Ethan Driscoll, this is Ethan Driscoll. 6'8", 313 pounds, 10.5-inch hands, 35 3/8-inch arms, an 83.5-inch wingspan, and a 5.22 40-yard dash. This is a guy who does have a whole lot of potential. I was thinking maybe he moves into guard because he doesn't have the most fluid mobility. But if you go and you watch him, he has that sort of awkward mobility that sometimes offensive linemen can get away with, where they look kind of like a doe just learning to walk. He kind of looks like that sometimes. But then last year in the preseason, if you remember, there was a breakaway run. I want to say it was Deneric Prince, but I can't remember exactly who it was. He broke off for like a 20-yard run, and you had Ethan Driscoll 15 yards downfield absolutely annihilating a linebacker. So maybe I'm just wrong on that evaluation, but I do think that he is an NFL offensive lineman. He was a UDFA offensive tackle out of Marshall last year. Stuck around on the 53 the entire season, and he looks to be getting a little bit more work in year 2. Then we have some notes about Taekwon Thornton, because Taekwon Thornton seems to be owning training camp. Taekwon Thornton making some really nice plays in one-on-ones. Mahomes finding Thornton for a nice catch at Chiefs camp. Taekwon Thornton is making this roster, and I will save from pulling out the RAS score for about the 9th consecutive day on Taekwon Thornton, but it is very impressive. If you have not looked at that RAS score, it's very impressive for a guy who is looked at as just a speed guy. And Taekwon Thornton did wash out in New England, right? That comes with weight. But in New England, he was not playing with Patrick Mahomes. In New England, he did not have a quarterback that could take advantage of his tools the way that Mahomes can. In New England, he was not part of a wide receiver core that has the speed necessary to make people forget Taekwon Thornton is fast as well. At this point, I think we have to ask, does Juju Smith-Schuster make this roster? No one has outshined him yet. Outshone? Outshined? I'll go with outshine because of Chris Cornell. No one has outshined him yet, but Juju Smith-Schuster brings the floor higher, right? You know what you're getting from Juju. You know he is he has the consummate work ethic. You know that he is an NFL wide receiver. You know that if the opportunity necessitates, he can have a 100-plus yard game the way he did last year. However, last year, after that 100-yard game, he kind of disappeared to the background again. So he does bring the floor higher for this group, but he does very little for the ceiling of this group. The problem right now is that in camp, none of the guys with a very high floor, Elijah Badger, for example, Mac Delana, for example, none of these guys are really making a push. None of these guys are making much noise on their own. The one that you could say maybe is Nico Remigio, and yeah, I think Nico Remigio is making this roster. So you're already looking at a wide receiver group: Rashee Rice, Jalen Royals, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Taekwon Thornton, Nico Remigio, that's 6 right there. Do they want to keep 7 wide receivers and that 7th guy be Juju Smith-Schuster? Because you're not putting Juju out there to return punts, right? That would be a disaster. So the math is starting to look very, very questionable for this. If they do decide to keep 7 wide receivers at this point, I think you have to start imagining that they would be doing it because they're trying to hang on to a guy that they don't think will pass through waivers. That's kind of it. So you're looking at that 7th wide receiver spot as a guy who won't pass through waivers, but maybe isn't ready to contribute yet. So it's going to be very interesting as time winds down in training camp. But this does once again raise the specter of the track star potential for this team. Worthy with a 4.21, Hollywood with a 4.27, Taekwon with a 4.28, Jalen Royals with a 4.42. If you put those guys on the field at the same time, 4 wide with those guys, and you put Travis Kelce on the field, so you've got an empty backfield. But, I mean, you could always motion Xavier Worthy into the backfield just to give that threat of a run. You could always put probably you don't want to put Travis Kelce in the backfield because he's more of a threat to throw it than to run it. But whatever you do, you just kind of spruce it up a little bit. And one of those guys, Taekwon, Hollywood, Worthy, Royals, one of those guys is on a safety, best case scenario for the defense. It's possible one of those guys is matched up one-on-one with a linebacker. 4.21, 4.27, 4.28 versus your linebacker who probably runs a 4.6. It's a matter of those matchups, and Andy Reid is a master of getting those matchups. Then we have something of a confusing, maybe the heat was getting to Caleb James here. Flying under the radar of Simmons looking the part at left tackle is Kingsley Suamataia looking fine at guard as well. That part is understandable. I know people will, but try not to overdo it with this. This is just my lifetime reaction I've seen from him in practice so far this year. Nothing crazy. We'll know a lot more after the first preseason game. Chiefs still have quite a few guys who could be competing for the job. This sounds like a William Shatner tweet. I know people will try, but not to overdo it with this, right? But a little bit of context there for Caleb. But the Chiefs do have an awful lot of interior offensive linemen that I think are real NFL guys. Mike Caliendo looks like a real NFL player. Hunter Nourzad, I think, has plus side potential at offensive guard. CJ Hansen, I think, might be a great guard with potential at tackle. Lots of guys in there. Dalton Cooper this year, playing offensive guard for the third-string offensive line, was a tackle in college and looks the part of an NFL guy. All of that said, I'm not sure there really is all that much competition for Kingsley at left guard. Yes, we saw him fail last season, but he was very, very young. He was a rookie, and he was playing left tackle. Left guard is an entirely different ballgame. So I talked about this in the video that I made last night. If you didn't get my full thoughts there, consider looking that video up, but it's called Chiefs May Have Solved the Offensive Line. That's what the thumbnail says. I can't remember what the title is, but I went through and talked about the left guard position last year, and could Kingsley be as good as Joe Thuney? All of these things. Could Josh Simmons really shore up the left tackle position? That's what I talked about in that video. But one of the things that I unearthed in my research for that video, Mike Caliendo played 237 snaps at left guard last season and did not give up a sack. Now that sounds, okay, all world, right? Mike Caliendo, give him the nod. Kingsley Suamataia gave up 3 or 5 sacks. I can't remember. But Mike Caliendo gave up 0 at left guard. Well, okay, fine. Do you think that Mike Caliendo would have only given up that many sacks at left tackle? Kingsley Suamataia is in a different atmosphere than Mike Caliendo athletically, and I'm not talking down on Mike Caliendo. I have been a fan of Mike Caliendo since the Kansas City Chiefs acquired him as a UDFA and said that he was an NFL guy. But here's the simple facts of the situation. That top RAS score there, that's Kingsley Suamataia being graded, by the way, against other offensive tackles. The bottom RAS there is Mike Caliendo being graded against offensive centers. So as an offensive tackle, Kingsley Suamataia has a 9.4. As an offensive center, Mike Caliendo has a 6.84. The difference here, so for example, Mike Caliendo is 6'4". For a center, that scores an 8.05. That is a big center. Kingsley Suamataia is 6'4.5". That scores a 2.53 for offensive tackle. So the world of difference between these two positions is pretty extreme. Kingsley Suamataia is a half an inch taller. He's 25 pounds heavier. He did 31 reps on the bench press, which we don't know what Mike Caliendo did. He did not test that way officially, but I don't think it would have been 31 reps. Mike Caliendo has 9.5-inch hands compared to 10 6/8 inch hands for Kingsley Suamataia, over an inch of additional hand. Pause. Arm length, 30 7/8 inches for Mike Caliendo versus 34 1/4 for Kingsley Suamataia. You have a vertical leap that is better for Mike Caliendo at 28.5 versus 28 for Kingsley, but Kingsley's got a little extra weight to be getting off the ground there. Then you have a 9'2" broad jump for Kingsley versus an 8'9" broad jump for Mike Caliendo. Kingsley ran a 5.04 40-yard dash compared to a 5.36 for Mike Caliendo. Mike Caliendo had a 1.79 10-yard split. Kingsley has a 1.73. The world of difference between these two athletes is pretty extreme. Mike Caliendo is an NFL offensive lineman. Kingsley Suamataia has the potential to be an elite NFL offensive lineman. And I don't think we can hold last year against him. He was thrown to the wolves right away. Now, if there's one thing we can hold against him from last year, he never rebounded. Was it a matter of he lost all of his confidence? Was it a matter of the coaching staff lost confidence in him? It's hard to tell. We don't know. We may never know. But I think that he could be an elite offensive lineman in the NFL. I think he could be a plus left tackle still. Some guys don't get there right away. But if you throw him in at left guard, if Mike Caliendo can go 275? What was it I said? If Mike Caliendo can go 237 snaps without giving up a sack, I think Kingsley might be able to match Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, who did not give up a sack all season, at least according to PFF. The next note here, Josh Simmons and Trey Smith giving the business to Mike Dana and Chris Jones, respectively. This is stonewalling right here. This is Mike Dana going up against Josh Simmons and getting stonewalled. There was another rep in practice where Mike Dana appeared to get the better of him. He took the edge on him. Mahomes had to step up in the pocket, delivered a pass to Jalen Royals in the flat. Watch that rep and count your 1,000s. Did he get around Did Mike Dana get around Josh Simmons? Yes, he did. It was 3 seconds into the rep. That is a win for the offensive lineman. So this is... I have yet to hear of Josh Simmons being beaten. There was another rep in the practice. Josh Simmons just tossed Ashton Gelati in the offensive line, defensive line drills. And the funniest part about this, probably, if you're watching this, you're male. My demographics say that you're probably a guy. And if you're a guy, you've probably been in a tussle with one of your friends, maybe a boss, maybe your father, maybe a brother, somebody you've been in a physical confrontation with. There's this moment at the end of that confrontation, whoever it is that gets smacked around gives one of these, right? That little right there saying, hey, are we back to being cool? Because I'm done. Are we back to being cool? There's this little hint, this little check moment. Joshua Simmons takes Ashton Gelati and back in the drill, bop, 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 and tosses him. Literally, hand over, tosses him. Like you're turning a steering wheel, tosses him. Ashton Gelati hits the ground, rolls, pops back up like he's probably done 1,000 times in his career, and then you see him do this. Right at Josh Simmons, saying, hey, you're not coming back, right? Like that was the rep? Are we cool now? And I'm trying not to get too excited about the prospect of Josh Simmons being an absolute dominator, an absolute world beater, being Thanos on the field, but it seems closer and closer to reality. Yeah, Ashton Gelati is a younger player. He's a rookie as well. Ashton Gelati is not from the Big Ten, right? So you're looking at a guy who was maybe playing lesser opponents than was Josh Simmons, but he dominated that rep. It is one thing to win a rep, but Simmons is rarely losing reps according to reports. I've yet to hear about him losing a rep. Plus, Simmons is occasionally dominating reps. So if there's anything to be taken from this, I think it's that Josh Simmons might be the answer, might be the truth out there at left tackle. Then we have a moment that makes my heart sing. There's a bluebird in my heart, and no one knows he's in there. Look at Chenal with the vertical to pick off Mahomes right here. Not that far off the ground, but he got up there to get it. In my opinion, coverage might be the thing that is keeping Leo Chenal from more playing time. So if he can flash more of this type of stuff, picking off Mahomes. Now in this rep, he jumps up, almost catches the ball, does not catch it. Hits the ground and catches the ball. There's that famous Brandon George clip. Brandon George being the UDFA out of Pitt linebacker. One of the best plays of the college season. He did this in a game, right? If Leo Chenal can be more consistent in coverage, we might see a whole lot more of the Lionheart. Hopefully that is the case. And if Chenal can clean things up in coverage, and he certainly has the athleticism to do so, having him on the field at all times, if you play two linebackers a lot, the Chiefs play two linebackers a lot. If that is Nick Bolton and Leo Chenal instead of Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquill, the Chiefs become very, very, very difficult to run on. And whether they've got two linebackers on the field or not. I think that Drew Tranquill did very well his first season in Kansas City. He seemed to take a step backwards last year. Chiefs rotating Jawan Taylor and Jawan Moore at right tackle for the second straight day. Is this Moore taking swing tackle reps at swing tackle locations? Or is this Jawan Taylor fighting for his job? I am inclined to think that it is the latter. I think that it might be that Jawan Taylor is not your starting right tackle beginning next season, which would make him much easier to cut ties with the following year. First four in the punt return order during warm-ups, if you put weight in that sort of thing, from Lyle Graverson, Nico Remigio, Xavier Worthy, Brashard Smith, and Sky Moore. Team punt drills at the end of practice. Return order goes Remigio, Sky Moore, who muffed it, Xavier Worthy, and Brashard Smith. So I think that the main talking point here is Nico Remigio, right? Everyone wants Nico Remigio on the team. Everyone wants Nico Remigio to be the punt returner, the kick returner, get some looks at wide receiver. Everybody wants that. But I'm going to leave you for the second day in a row with some thoughts on Sky Moore. No, thank you. No, thank you.